We'll now move to our last speaker from the morning sessions, Dr. Rachel Cowen from the University of Manchester. Rachel, thank you for joining us. Rachel has over 25 years experience as a cancer researcher, organisational developer and equalities champion in higher education. She's led a variety of institutional strategic developments to support academic excellence and improve equality, diversity and inclusion within research. And Rachel, we're very glad to have you here today to talk about this very important issue for the research community and indeed for society as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James, and thanks to UK Rio for the opportunity to speak. I'll just share my slides. I just have a thumbs up or a yes, that's fine. Can you see?
That's up at full screen, thank you.
Brilliant, great. So I am Rachel Cowen, as James said, and my preferred pronouns are she and her. And I'm going to be talking about and using Manchester University as a case study of how we're embedding equality, diversity and inclusion in research practice and culture. But before I launch into the initiatives and some good practice sharing, I really want to just emphasise the case for equality, diversity and inclusion in research, because I think one of our biggest challenges within research and innovation and within the higher education sector is really prioritising equality, diversity and inclusion. We see it as an add-on, something that will be sorted out by the EDI teams within our organisations, and we don't take individual responsibility for this work and really approach research through the lens of equality, diversity and inclusion. So there are three real drivers to really prioritise equality, diversity and inclusion. Obviously in the UK, we have the Equality Act 2010. There's legal obligation for us to ensure that we anticipate and prevent any discrimination against anyone from protected groups. As a large organisation with more than 250 employees, the University of Manchester has a public sector equality duty, and we must report our gender pay gap. So, you know, there's obviously that legal requirement. There is obviously a moral case. It's the right thing to do. As an institution, Manchester also has one of its primary three goals, alongside research, teaching, and learning, we have social responsibility. And so, you know, it really is part of the what it should be to be a student or staff member at Manchester. It should be the right thing to do and fits with our social responsibility ambition. But on a pragmatic level, it's also business critical. So we want to be an institution that attracts diverse global talent and can nurture and support that talent. And we know from a large research evidence base across all sectors that diversity of thinking, perspective, background really drives creativity and innovation. And if we don't prioritise equality, diversity and inclusion in research, we really will limit the questions that we look for solutions to and the ideas that can be brought forward and we won't be benefiting everyone across the whole population in an equitable way. So what we've done, and as I say, I'll be using Manchester's data, which is published as part of our Equality Information Report, which we publish annually. I'll be using it as a case study example, but we are by no means an outlier, and we are very much classic of the picture that I will paint will be classic for research intensive universities across the UK. So the first place we're really focusing our attention on is looking at who is within the researcher workforce at the University of Manchester and how diverse are we, and who is able to progress their careers and is celebrated and rewarded within our current culture. So here you will see a graph of our classic leaky pipeline. It's mirrored, as I say, in the wider sector. I've presented some data for HE across the UK, as well as data in the purple there and on the graph for the University of Manchester. So we have, through our student admissions and real widening participation and access to higher education, in terms of gender parity, we've really made significant progress. So you can see that we have gender parity in our student profile at undergraduate level and at postgraduate level. In fact, women are in the minority within the postgraduate community at Manchester. But when we then look at further along in the academy pipeline, what we see is at the early career researcher stage, the lecturer stage, we maintain that parity. But at the higher levels of senior lecturer, reader and professor, we start to see a lack of diversity with respect to gender coming through and significant underrepresentation. This is despite having Athena Swan, the Gender Equality Charter within the UK, and for many colleagues, committed colleagues trying to drive gender equality within the sector. You know, we have been a signatory on Athena Swan since 2008, and we only had 12% of our professoriate who were women at that time. Actually, through Athena Swan initiatives, that has now risen to 28%, the latest data for 2021. So we are making progress, but it's slow, and that's with respect to gender. When we look at wider protected characteristics, we have robust data for race and disability. For beyond those three protected characteristics, our data is poor, and that's an area where we need to improve across the sector. But when we look at Black, Asian and minority ethnic profile at student and staff level, again, we see a leaky pipeline. At the undergraduate level, 32% of our students are from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background, really showing the international composition of our students. When we then look at the postgraduate level on our taught master's level programs, this drops to 26.3%. And then when we get to postgraduate research level, it's down to 15.1%. And then when we look at the staff profile with respect to race, we see this significant loss of ethnic diversity at the early career level compared to our undergraduate profile. And this continues to drop, such that at the professor level, only 11.3% of our professors are from a Black, Asian and minority ethnic background. If we then disaggregate this and we look not just at that BAME classification, which is blunt and we're moving away from, and we were, for example, to look at Black professors, we have only 6% of our professoriate who are Black. And if we look intersectionally at women and ethnic identity, we only have one Black woman professor at Manchester, and that's Professor Dawn Edge, who I share my academic lead for EDI role with. And that's something that really needs to change. And as I say, we are not alone. This is a sector-wide issue. We've only really just started to collect robust data in terms of disability, but again, we are seeing, you know, roughly around 11% of our students and staff with a declared disability. But as we move through the academy to more senior level, we see this drop down to 2.7% at the professorial level. So we really do have this loss of diversity in terms of our academic career pipeline. And this is just showing some data from Advanced HE looking sector-wide. And here you can see the image shows starkly, you know, we have 14,000 white male professors in the UK. And as I said, we only have 35 Black women professors in the UK. So what's happening is it's resulting in both gender and ethnicity and disability pay gaps within our institutions. And we are committed to really closing these gaps by really supporting people from with protected characteristics to move up through the academic career path. And also to look at who are influencing and key decision makers within our organisation, and looking at our senior leadership team to make sure that we have full representation that reflects our community at that earliest career stage. So what I hope I've shown is we've made real progress with respect to gender, but now actually we really need to focus our attentions intersectionally and particularly at ethnicity. So it's not just about the workforce, though. We also have been looking at our data and qualitative information around the experiences of our researchers at the University of Manchester, as have many of our colleagues across the wider sector. So we have been looking right throughout the research life cycle, as I say, at who's celebrated and rewarded, but actually who are we engaging to shape and hone and identify key questions that we should be asking and answering through our research, looking at who's being funded and leading as principal investigator and on grants, and also how we are openly sharing and disseminating our research in an inclusive way. So I just want to now share some of the initiatives that we've been driving forward to really embed EDI, both in workforce and practice and culture. And as I say, we're not alone in this. And, you know, there really is a call to arms, if you like, across the sector. And, you know, multiple documents from Wellcome, UKRI, from the government, really saying we must look at the systemic issues that exist within the research and innovation space, identify barriers and dismantle any inequalities that limit ambitions, inclusion and participation for the benefit of UK research and innovation. So we've looked long and hard more generally beyond the pipeline data, and we see bias and disadvantage in our recruitment and promotion process, particularly for ethnic minority researchers. 5 years ago, we saw the same for women, but we've really closed that gap and addressed those inequalities in terms of recruitment and promotion. We also see grant disparities. So we see success rates that are significantly lower for ethnic minorities and for women who are applying for and receiving lower grant funding than men. Through our qualitative surveys, we both of university staff generally, but then also a specific research culture survey that we ran just before the pandemic in 2020, we see cultural issues and perceptions of reward and recognition. So women research staff perceiving lower levels of recognition for their work. And we have a strong dignity at work policy and zero tolerance of discrimination, bullying and harassment. But through our qualitative work, we know that women, ethnic minorities and disabled staff are significantly more likely to report that they've experienced discrimination, bullying and harassment. So we're committed and working hard to address all of these things and to really level the playing field, because we fully recognise that there's within the HE sector and within our organisation, there's a myth of meritocracy, but that privilege, bias and disadvantage plays out. So we have a programme of work to promote inclusive recruitment. We have obviously the essential training around inclusive recruitment, equality, diversity and avoiding unconscious bias. We have increasing use of unconscious bias observers and a commitment to diverse and balanced recruitment panels. We also are working and actively using positive action. So where we have historical underrepresentation, and our data shows 3 years of underrepresentation, we have used ring-fenced studentships at masters and at postgraduate research level. We're also trying to support underrepresented undergraduate students to allow them to develop their CVs and really be credible applicants for prestigious postgraduate studentships through targeted summer research placements to give them that research experience in a funded way. So these are funded summer placements. And we've also launched specific early career fellowships called the EDI Pereira Fellowships. And we've launched 7 new fellows at Manchester for early career researchers who are underrepresented further along the career pipeline. And we've also been looking at what we value in terms of when we're recruiting researchers. So we're piloting anonymised CVs and also the Royal Society and UKRI-led narrative CV. So this is much more focusing on your contribution to research rather than some of those narrow metrics that around publications and grants that we've been very fixated on within the sector so far. And again, another form of positive action that we're piloting is something called the Rooney-Mansfield rule. So this is where at least 1 in 3 candidates that are shortlisted for interview that meet the criteria should be from an underrepresented group. We've also worked hard to broaden out our reward and recognition mechanisms, and particularly for early career researchers who, we've created specific research excellence awards, not just again on those narrow metrics of publication output, but also wider research impact and contribution to the research environment. We also have a very clear career path for research staff and an annual promotions call that is independent of their external finite funding, and training and mentorships to support research staff to really evidence their achievements and work towards promotion. And really lots of new initiatives to pump prime independent research at the early career researcher level and allow diverse researchers to develop that network of support and advocacy that is so essential to currently in the current culture to academic career success. So we have new funding schemes for those things, and also for any additional caring costs that might be incurred through profile raising activity. We're also addressing grant disparities through targeted workshops for women and ethnic minorities, giving diverse researchers opportunities to observe external funding panels. And most recently, we've just launched an inclusive advocacy programme partnering talented early career researchers from underrepresented groups with senior research leaders who will advocate for them, identify opportunities, and really give them a leg up in a way that happens anyway within the academy, but just extend that advocacy to people that historically would not have received it before. One thing that we know from our data and from our qualitative is taken. So that could be maternity, paternity, adoption leave. It could be through sickness. It could be men and women from any background. So for our academics who are on a teaching and research pathway, when they come back from extended leave of 6 months or more, we are pump priming their research activity. We are safeguarding them from teaching and administrative activity, and we are allowing them to focus in to get their research back on track. This really has been shown to reap real benefits, protected time to secure grants, to write papers, to step up to leadership roles, and really strong qualitative experiences. Statements like this is the best thing that has happened in my academic career. We've also invested heavily in targeted leadership development programs, and we have targeted programs at the national level. I'm the Aurora champion for the institution, and we've tracked the careers of people who've been on this women's leadership program, showing that twice as likely to be promoted compared to counterparts more nationally. And we also have an in-house women's leadership program for women who are already within leadership roles, and we are part of a national pilot program by the Women's Higher Education Network, the 100 Black women professors now, and we have 5 Black women academics on that program. The real power of this program is that actually we're also working with our senior leadership team so that they can understand the systemic disadvantage within the organisation, and also hear and support the experiences of the participants on the programme. And we've also specifically launched this year a new leadership programme for researchers at all levels to promote authentic and inclusive leadership. So that's just a snapshot of the targeted programme, but through my evaluation, what we hear from people on those programmes is it's no point in having discussions around gender and race and disability and how it plays out in the academy and how it prevents progression and career success. We need men here. We need everybody, our current leaders and managers, to be engaged and accountable and empowered to act as role models of inclusion. So we have created a new leadership framework at Manchester and a self-assessment capability tool. And within this is the key attribute of role model for inclusion. So we are currently cascading this out, starting with our senior leadership, and really getting them to think about what are the behaviours of an inclusive leader, what can they practically do, and really to identify what's in it for them, what's their personal why, and what things will they commit to. And this is something that we will then be cascading throughout the organisation to all of our leaders and managers, and following up with them to see the impact of those inclusive actions. And finally, the one thing I wanted to share was, we're not just engaging our senior leaders and managers throughout the organisation. We're really starting to embed equality, diversity and inclusion practice into our teaching. So we, 2 years ago, launched a unit called Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, Your Role in Shaping a Fairer World, for our undergraduate students. So right at the start of their researcher career journey. So this basically takes them and connects them with the history and legislation around equality, diversity and inclusion, and then takes a deep dive into how equality, diversity and inclusion plays out in the workplace, in education, in health and social care, but importantly in research and innovation. And the final module brings it all together and asks them to think about their role as an inclusive leader. And again, in the same way as we're doing with our senior leaders and managers, to identify what steps they're going to take towards a more inclusive future culture across the academy. And here we can see Dawn Edge, who I job share with, our one Black woman professor, as a real role model within our organisation for equality, diversity and inclusion. The one final point I really wanted to make was, in terms of, we really want to understand our current culture. We want to create a safe space and environment where people can call out poor behaviours and discrimination. And we have really been much more to do in terms of visibility and engagement with this. And we have embarked on a programme of active bystander training with our researchers to really help them understand what microaggressions, poor behaviours might look like in the context of academic research, get them to explore through case studies what's acceptable, and how to really challenge poor behaviours, but then signposting to this formal confidential support system within the institution. So it's a very whistle-stop tour of what we've been doing in terms of embedding EDI and research at Manchester. I would absolutely acknowledge that we are at the start of our journey to transform our culture and work towards equality, diversity and inclusion. We are actively priming research in this area so that we have strong evidence base for what's leading to inequalities, and we know what works. So we're not just throwing lots of initiatives, we're fully evaluating them. I will provide the link in the chat to the wider work. We're also creating a toolkit. There are several toolkits, again, that I'll provide the link to around inclusive research practice. And I would like to thank the Wellcome and University of Manchester who have funded much of the work that I've discussed today. So I'm going to stop sharing then, James, and open up for questions.
Rachel, thank you. Sorry, pardon me. Rachel, thank you very much.